Hey, it's Dave Brown here, host of Now with Dave Brown on AMI. Check out this latest highlight from the show.
As Black History Month continues, so does the conversation around the importance of intersectionality. Historically speaking, where have racism and ableism intersected? Kelly Bron Johnson can offer some perspective. She is the founder of Completely Inclusive, and she joins us now. Good morning, Kelly.
Good morning.
So let's get started. So how has ableism and racism been intersected historically?
So if we go back to the slave trade, I mean, it's a horrific example, but it's a perfect example of when we have the collision of imperialism and capitalism coming together. And this is where we see this concept of people as prophets, right? So it was the strongest people, the able-bodied people that were chosen. And the ones who survived, obviously, the being kidnapped across the ocean as well. But those who could work, do heavy manual labor in hot sun and in all sorts of conditions. And so those ones were the ones that were valued. They were the ones that were more profitable for enslavers to keep. And of course, those who were not able to keep up were either beaten or killed. And so there's a great emphasis on bodies that could be more productive and make more money. And we still have these concepts kind of continuing today in the workplace.
And so in terms of the backdrop of slavery, like what does that mean in terms of people acquiring disabilities?
I think there's a lot of fear, when we think about this fact that, well, if I get a disability, then I'm not going to be able to be productive. When we always talk about being a productive member of society, and so much emphasis is put on that. And of course, that means that you have to work. And so people think of disabled bodies and not being able to do that, to work to that capacity. And we know, even if we go back again to the slave trade, that African people were actually actively disfiguring themselves or maiming themselves so that they would not be chosen to be enslaved. And so we can see all sorts of different parallels in history and to now, where we're putting this value on our work, our output, our productivity, and our bodies, and using that as the kind of the archetype of what is good, what is profitable, what is beneficial for the workplace.
Yeah, it truly is horrific hearing those types of stories and learning about what people had to do in order to avoid the slave trade and things like that. But as you mentioned, there is still a continuation of this. As workplaces have evolved, how has ableism and racism continued to be entwined?
Well, I see that these systemic issues, they're still there, right? And we're all kind of living under it. And a lot of the times we're kind of subconsciously just kind of carrying it out. But we see, unless people are really taking the time to analyze how they're thinking, what their actions are going to be, their behaviors, then we'll continue to see racism and ableism and all different barriers in the workplace. We can see it really exemplified when people get scared of things like affirmative action. And we even look at, if you go back to the 70s and 80s, when more women were entering the workplace, and a lot of men were going, well, how am I going to have a job if all these women are taking the jobs? And so we see these kind of parallels, these kind of themes repeated in different ways when we're talking about hiring Indigenous people, we're hiring Black people, we're hiring Two-Spirit LGBTQ people, or we're hiring disabled people. And then all of a sudden people start to be threatened and say, well, what about me? I'm going to lose a piece of my pie. And that's something that I think people have to really analyze and think about more.
Absolutely. Well, and also too, there's been more education, more training, more awareness of the need to improve diversity, inclusion, equity in workplaces. And that comes with the form of training and workshops and things like that as well. So how has intersectionality been approached in these types of educational settings, these trainings, these workshops and things like that?
I think, unfortunately, despite a lot of the work that people like me are doing when we're working into diversity and inclusion and accessibility, that part seems to get forgotten a little bit, because workplaces, and I'd say even just all of humans, we love to categorize things. We love to put things in neat boxes, and that helps us, I think it gives people a sense of being able to kind of control things. And so a lot of the times when I approach companies, it's very much, oh, well, that was an HR thing from last year, or this belongs to finance, or we're only going to look at gender equity this year. And people don't work like that. People are much more complex, right? And so if we are not really approaching intersectionality in the work that we're doing, just a quick example, the experience of a blind man is going to be different from the experience of a blind woman. The barriers that they face are going to be different despite the fact that they're both blind. And if we choose not to look at people as complex, multiple identity people, the way that we are, we're leaving out real world experiences, and we're not getting the full picture.
In terms of how people can kind of improve this, I guess, this outlook and make sure that we're doing a better job as including more of these isms in the training, like what can be done better to improve the diversity training, the inclusiveness and the intersectionality in training?
So I was going to flip your question a little bit to kind of, the work that I'm doing is not about the isms, right? The racism, sexism, classism, ableism. It's about understanding how race and sex and class and disability and people and communities as a whole and how we all work together. So just to be very clear, the issue of racism belongs to the racists. It doesn't belong to Black people. It doesn't belong to racialized people. The issue of sexism belongs to the misogynist and not to women. And so I really advocate for people to use their lived experience as much as possible when we're doing this work. Although that can be very difficult for people to want to share those stories. So I understand that you can't have everybody who has lived experience doing this kind of diversity and anti-racism and accessibility work. And as much as I have many different intersectional identities as well, I can't do it all. I don't live with all of them. So as much as possible, I bring in other experts to work with me. But I really feel that having people with lived experience kind of adds that richer element to it. It's more real life. This is more the kind of people that we will encounter on a day-to-day basis. And I think that by having these kind of deeper dialogues with each other is really the way that we're going to overcome or really dismantle a lot of these systemic issues and challenges that are in the workplace and out in all of society.
Have there been any positive signs in your work that whether it's people coming forward, being more open and willing to share their lived experience or feeling more comfortable in their workplaces, in their settings to be their authentic selves?
I've really seen some very positive examples from some of the companies that I've worked with. One, for example, that put a huge emphasis on invisible disabilities. Again, I don't really like calling them invisible. They're usually visible in some way, or hidden disabilities, but they put a big emphasis on that and on mental health. And it was absolutely amazing and completely moving to see when I was able to assist at a panel that they had where they had everybody from the CEO to any other person, sharing their learning disability, sharing their experience with TBI, sharing their experience with depression, and the impact that had. Well, first, the fact that they were so brave and they felt safe enough to be able to share that with the whole company, but the impact that had on the other employees, and I think the kind of environment and culture that then creates is absolutely amazing to see. And I'm so humbled that I was able to witness that.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Is there something that people can do? Like, is there an important first step, I guess, when approaching these types of conversations and being introspective? And it's like, how can, as a business or as an individual, change your outlook on how to address or tackle or approach intersectionality?
I think people have to really go with an open mind, to really put the ego at the door, and to believe people and their lived experiences. The first reaction a lot of people have when they hear, let's say I was to share something microaggression, right? And I don't believe in microaggressions either. There's many terms that we use that I don't follow along with. It's an aggression, and it's the first reaction a lot of the time is I can't believe that was so bad, or I can't believe that happened to you. And I think it's really important that people understand that we people who lived in different bodies, people who are racialized, we experience barriers and discrimination on a regular basis. And if you choose not to believe that that's happening, then you cannot understand the depth of the problem. And so there's often a lot of denial almost, and it feels like being invalidated from my experience and almost gaslighted, because I'm like, oh, maybe it wasn't that they were racist. Maybe, people make excuses for all sorts of things. Maybe, they were just trying to help, people kind of assuming people's needs, especially, when we talk about disability. All the good intent and all the excuses we can make don't erase the actual issue or the problem that happened. And it's really important to believe people when they say, this happened to me, this was how I interpreted it, and I've interpreted it this way because this has been my life experience up till now that shows or demonstrates that this is what is happening. And so when we're telling you that these systemic issues, that this discrimination is happening on a regular basis, you have to believe us. That's the first way to gain that knowledge and that understanding of what's happening to other people. Even if that's something that you wouldn't do, and that's fantastic, you're a wonderful person, but it's happening to us, and many, many other people are doing it, regardless of what one person is doing.
Absolutely. Kelly, thank you so much for taking the time diving in this topic with us. I really appreciate it, and really appreciate the conversation we had.
Thank you so much.
That was Kelly Bron Johnson, who is the founder of Completely Inclusive.
Do you want to dive into more conversations like this? Watch Now with Dave Brown weekdays at 9 a.m. Eastern on AMI-TV, or download the podcasts wherever you listen. Do you want to dive into more conversations like this? Watch Now with Dave Brown weekdays at 9 a.m. Eastern on AMI-TV, or download the podcasts wherever you listen.